On Zoom? All right, so we're live. We'll call the meeting to order. Linda, would you please call the roll?
Senator French,
Here.
Senator Hicks,
Here.
Senator Ide,
Here.
Senator Kolb,
Present.
Chairman Steinmetz.
Here. Okay, the first bill for our consideration is Senate File 124, Senator Salazar.
Madam Chair and Committee, thank you. So appreciate the work you do. Madam Chair, this is a good bill, and but it can be better. And with your indulgence and the indulgence of the committee, I'd like to have a little more time and whatever your wishes, Madam Chair, but perhaps we can do even better on this bill with a little more input from everyone. So I would ask that you lay it over, whatever your wishes are, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you, Senator Salazar. It is an important bill, and we do want to get it just right. So we'll hold it back until we hear from you. If you find some fixes, then we'll move on as you ask us to.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right, so the next bill for our consideration is Senate File 137, and since I am presenting the bill, I will turn the meeting over to our good Vice Chairman French.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
I'll go down there.
Next up, Senate File Number 137, Subdivisions Fencing Requirements. Our good Senator Steinmetz will present this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Committee, I just would remind us, it's already kind of been a long session, but we started out with some good work from the previous Ag Committee on the lawful fencing statutes, and we decided that the good work they did belonged in the subdivision fencing requirements rather than in the lawful fences. And so what we've done with this bill, if you look on page 2, Romanette, line 7 through the end of the page and on to the next page 3, that encapsulates Title 1128-102, which is the definition of a lawful fence out of our fencing statutes. We went ahead and put it in there just written out because I thought it would be easier for subdividers or people looking at that section of law to know exactly what they were looking at and what they had to comply with. So that's just basically language out of 1128-102. That goes on to continue clear to page 4. And then that's where the new law actually comes in. When you start at line 4, the subdivider shall be responsible for all costs of the perimeter fence and the construction of the perimeter fence. Upon completion of the construction of a perimeter fence required under this section, the subsequent landowner, or if the subdivided parcel has not been sold, the subdivider shall be responsible for the costs of maintaining the perimeter fence and not be liable for any damage caused by or arising from livestock pastured on adjoining land that may breach the perimeter fence and wander onto the subdivided land, provided the perimeter fence is maintained. And then section C on line 22 just talks about before you can receive your subdivision permit, you have to have evidence of the construction or plans to construct the perimeter fence as required by this subsection. The rest just conforms language to the rest of the subdivision statutes. And then we go ahead and on page 6, section 2, line 6, we're repealing 1128-106B. And I will read that to you because I know repealers are very important. And we always like to know what we're repealing. I can flip to it really quick. 1128-106 B just says for subdivisions as defined in 185302, the subdivider shall be responsible for the construction of a perimeter fence. And then it allows for half the payment to be for the other landowner, but we're basically repealing that part that deals with subdivision perimeter fences. And we're dealing with it here in the subdivision law instead of the lawful fence law. So the other part about this bill that is of note is the penalties under the subdivision part. Any person who willfully violates any provision of this article or any rule or order issued under this article shall upon conviction be fined not more than $500 or imprisoned in a county jail for not more than 30 days or both each day of the violation of the offense. And so this is different than the penalties we had before in the lawful fence statute, which were very high. So this is a little less egregious of a penalty than what we had before. So with that being said, that's the bill, and I'd stand for any questions.
Committee, any questions of Senator Steinmetz? Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real quick, the penalties, would you hit on that just one more time? I kind of missed it. So you lessened the penalties and they were what, and then they went to what? That's all I asked. Thank you.
Okay, yes, Mr. Chairman, Senator Ide, the penalties are found in 185314. They're existing penalties that just ties into this law. When we were in the lawful fence statutes, what we were doing is we had any person, the owner of any unlawful wire fence is guilty of a misdemeanor and shall be fined not less than $150 or more than $750. And for each subsequent offense, the fine shall not be less than $750 or more than $3,000. And that was just the lawful fence violations that we had changed, and they were pretty high, so.
Committee, any other questions of Senator Steinmetz? Senator Kolb.
Yes, Co-Chair French. Senator Steinmetz, just a question on the intent. It's come to my attention that some of the wording kind of changed from what it was to what it currently states, and in so much as it used to be stated, it shall be the responsibility of construction of the subdividers shall be responsible for the construction of a perimeter fence. It changed to construct. So I just want to make sure that the intent is the force of fence construction on a subdivision. And I apologize for not bringing this up sooner. I only became aware of this very recently. So just a clarification, if you could, is that the intent that they have to put a fence in? Or is the intent that if they chose to put a fence in, they would pay for the said fence and maintenance? Thank you.
Mr. Vice Chairman, it's in I, the subdivider shall construct or cause to be constructed a perimeter fence, and they have to include it in their plans for the subdivision. So they've either got to construct it or have evidence of the construction or plans to construct any perimeter fence, which is on page 5 as well as page 2. So page 2, lines 7 through 10 was the first section I read to you, and then page 5, line 1 through 3. Okay, right.
Committee, any other questions of Senator Steinmetz? Seeing none, stick around, Senator. There may be other questions triggered by this. Any public comment on this? Yes, please come forward.
There it is. Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee, Lori Urbikite with the Wyoming Realtors, and we want to be on record. We supported the last fencing bill, we supported the last fencing amendment bill, and we support this bill. We believe fencing makes good neighbors, and if we're going to have rural subdivisions, this, I believe, really can alleviate a lot of problems up front. So we do not have an issue with this bill. We support the bill. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of Lori?
Okay, thank you.
Seeing none. Any other public comment? Please come forward.
Mr. Chairman, Brett Moline, Wyoming Farm Bureau. To be brief, we support the bill as well. With that, I would sit for any questions.
Any questions, committee of Mr. Moline? No, nope. All right, thank you. Are there any other public comments? Going once, going twice. Is there anyone online? Nobody online? Okay. Public comment is closed. Committee, what's your thoughts here? Okay, Bill's moved and seconded. Comments? Seeing nothing, none?
Mr. Chairman, I have one proposed amendment.
Oh,
if
okay,
we're
yeah,
gonna work the bill.
Oh,
yeah, yeah, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if this is where Senator Kolb was looking, but on page 4, line 4, Romanet 3, not exactly, this is a pretty busy sentence, and I think what we want to do is just say the subdivider shall be responsible for all cost of construction for perimeter fences. So to get to that, what we would need to do is go in there and on line 5, strike the perimeter fence and the. And then after construction, strike of, and insert for, strike the, and then make fences plural. So now it will read, the subdivider shall be responsible for all costs of construction for perimeter fences. We get to the maintenance issue down in subsection B, Madam Chairman. So it's just trying to clean up the language so it says what we want it to say. So any questions?
Any questions?
Question.
Committee? Yes, Senator. Hyde.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Just questioning the plural on fences. That's, I think that's fine. If there's more than one fence, I guess that if it's not contiguous, I'm not sure. Just a question. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I don't think you need it. It's implied. It's all perimeter. So you can strike the flag. So I think we know what that does. That'll just say the subdivider shall be responsible for all costs of construction for perimeter fence.
Okay, having heard the amendment. Madam Chairman, help me out here.
I'll second that amendment.
Okay, there's a second to that amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, back on the bill. Are there any other amendments?
Question on the bill, Mr.
Seeing none. Roll call on the bill, please.
Senator French,
Aye.
Senator Hicks,
Aye.
Senator Ide, Senator Kolb,
No.
Chairman Steinmetz.
Aye.
There are 4 ayes and 1 no.
Mr. Vice Chairman, you're doing such a good job. Would you like to finish out the meeting?
Um, uh, uh, yes, I would. The next bill for our consideration committee is Senate File Number 134, Right to Farm Real Estate Disclosures. Senator Bouchard, would you like to present the bill to us, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Anthony Bouchard, Senate District 6. Thank you, members of the committee, Madam Chair and Vice Chairman. This is another good neighbor bill. We see a lot of people moving into Wyoming. We see a lot of purchases that are happening sight unseen almost, where they're not even coming into Wyoming. And with the nature of our rural state, it's somewhat troubling that we're seeing this. And I think that, we know this in other states where we have agricultural land that butts up against land that's developing. We have people that move in and think that somehow that the farmer is a nuisance. Dust, spray, tractors running at night, machinery running at night. And this bill really doesn't have any penalties. What it does is when you sell a piece of property, you have to hand over a disclosure that they have to sign. And you will see that on page 3. So I'm going to skip down to the heart of the bill. This property is located within 1 mile of farm and ranch lands as defined in Wyoming statute. Accordingly, the property may be subject to inconveniences or discomforts resulting from agricultural operations that are a normal and necessary aspect of living in a community with a strong rural character and a healthy agriculture sector. Customary agricultural practices in farm and ranch operations may include, but are not limited to, noise, odors, dust, light, insects, and the operation of pumps and machinery, the storage and disposal of manure, bee pollination, and the ground or aerial application of fertilizers, pesticides, or herbicides. These practices may occur at any time during a 24-hour day. Individual sensitivities to those practices can vary from person to person. You may wish to consider the impacts of these agricultural practices before you complete the purchase. Please be advised that you may be barred from obtaining legal remedies against farm and ranch operations conducted in a manner consistent with proper and accepted customs and standards pursuant to the Wyoming Right to Farm and Ranch Act. And it has the statute there. To go back in the beginning of the bill, on page 2, you'll see that it has a section for vacant land, and it also comes down and defines that that's less than 140 acres. Purchases that are over that don't need to fall into this Disclosure Act. When you look at vacant land, it would be undeveloped. And then if you go to the next page of the bill on page 3, every seller of vacant land or subdivided land shall provide to any prospective buyer in writing a property disclosure statement that provides notice of farm and ranch operations that are occurring within 1 mile of the land to be sold. And then here's the part where there is no penalty, no transfer subject to this subsection shall be invalidated solely because of a failure to comply with this section. Now, I can tell you that working with realtors, they're gonna do all this, and realtors don't like to miss any details. So they usually will have all those forms pre-printed in their electronic system. When they deal with a client, they will print them out rapidly and make sure they're signed. I think what this really does is there are people that buy land next to agricultural land that don't know that what they're moving next to. And we want to make sure that we keep it, like I said, it's a good neighbor bill. People that are buying will get that disclosure, and I think they'll be better neighbors because of it. So I'll leave it with that and stand for any questions.
Committee, are there any questions of Senator Bouchard, Senator Ide?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, Senator Bouchard. I got a few questions on this, just talked to a few realtors after co-sponsoring this, and you know, you've got language in here on page 3, line 6, says no transfer subject to this subsection shall be invalidated solely because of the failure to comply with this subsection. But up above on line 2, or line 3, I'm sorry, the first word there says shall. And those conflict a little bit. And I think that I'd put may in there instead of shall. That's kind of what I'm seeing on this. So, I mean, I know a lot of real estate people get frustrated with disclosure stuff. It's a little more buyer beware, and we're not trying to protect everybody, but you know, that's the only part of this. I like the bill for that matter, but I don't think we should be forcing the realtors to do it with that wording. Thank you.
Mr.
Any
Chairman?
other questions? Yes, Senator Hicks.
Yeah. Senator Bouchard, on page 2, line 23, one C, what's the 140 acre? Why 100? Unusual subject.
Mr. Vice Chair, Senator Hicks, to tell you the truth, I don't have a reason on that number other than we looked at other states. And this, remember, this is undeveloped land on this section here. So it pretty much was pulling a number in that was acceptable in others, that we saw in language in other states. And then Mr. Vice Chair and Senator Ide, this bill by its very nature is a shall, because it means realtors shall do it. But there's no penalty. There is no penalty in this bill if it gets missed. I mean, if a realtor actually just says, whoops, I forgot, there is no penalty here, and there's nothing holding up the sale. The idea here is to get this out there, even have this where the brokers are policing this, making sure it's happening. We want to make this where it's not intrusive to their existing business. And like I said, there's nothing in this bill that's going to either penalize them. The only penalties that are going to happen is when the broker says to their agent, "Did you get that form?" And there's check charts in there. Inside their system, when you do a sale, there's a check chart and you have to complete it. But the broker usually won't sign off on it until you give them that form that has all the check marks. So they'll police all that on the inside. So I absolutely have no heartburn at all in the way the bill's written. I think it's self-policing, and there's, even if they do forget, there's nothing there that even stops the sale or does anything to it. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, Senator Bouchard. Would you consider an amendment on that shall and say recommend? Or I could get with this, but I don't like telling anybody what to do for the most part and creating more paperwork. So if you would consider an amendment to that, I'd like that. Anyway, thank you.
Mr. Vice Chair, Senator Ide, that just guts the bill, and nobody's going to do it. The idea here is to make a good neighbor bill where people are being notified that they're butting up against farmland. All it is a piece of paper that says, and we've read it. This is customary in other states that have had these struggles. We've got it coming. People are coming here and they're buying land, like I said, even sight unseen. And we want them to be notified that they're not going to be, that we don't want to bring in maybe some of their bad habits from other states and going against the agriculture land and the owners. So I think if we do an amendment to just as may, it just says, well, do it if you want. I mean, we're making law here that says, do it. If you don't, we're not going to penalize you. We're not going to stop your transfer of property. So I think it's as easy as it can be.
Okay, committee, any other questions? Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Co-Chair French. Senator Bouchard, I had a couple questions. One was what's the history? Has there been lawsuits with people moving into agricultural land and then, trying to stop them in doing their operations? That was one question. The second question is on page 2, line 20, when we're not within the boundaries of a platted subdivision, is there, I guess, a reason why we exclude counties in there? My county in particular, the land is zoned outside in the county as, say, an agricultural use. And I just wondered if you think that would be, appropriate to also include that into this group of people with notification. Thank you, Senator Bouchard.
Mr. Vice Chair and Senator Kolb, if you go to page 3, line 2, you'll see that it has both. That's basically, you can say undeveloped would be vacant land and developed would be subdivided land. So they fit into both definitions. But the reason it was defined in this bill is because of the 140 acres. So the whole idea was on the undeveloped land was that a bigger plot of land, something bigger than 140 acres, is kind of a different buy, if that makes sense. So this is targeted at smaller, even if somebody buys an undeveloped piece of land to develop, they're going to have to sign that disclosure. I think they should know already, but that's the purpose of why that's on page 2. When you go to page 3, subdivided land is there, and that would be the opposite of some of the definition that you see here.
Follow up, Senator Kolb.
So is there any lawsuit history and people? I'm sorry, I just thank you.
Mr. Vice Chair and Senator Kolb, where I first saw this, believe it or not, is I bought land in another state, and it was kind of cool because you sign that disclosure right up front when you're butted up against. In my case, I was butted right up against agricultural land, so enacting this actually gets rid of that problem. I mean, not altogether. I mean, you're going to have some people that push the envelope, but what it really does say up front. So, I mean, that's my experience with it because I've seen it. I can't tell you what it was before those laws were enacted. So, honestly, I think we're moving into a different era in Wyoming because we're seeing so many people purchase land. But as far as seeing disclosures work in other states, that's how I saw it. That's how I saw this bill. And when you purchase a piece of property, you're pretty much given that to sign, and you're up front. I can't say my neighbor's a nuisance when could be operating 24 hours a day. So I did not see it in that state prior to that disclosure law. So I don't know a history on that. I think we will end up there if we don't do this now. So I hope that answers your question.
You're good. Okay, Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Well, I signed on to this bill because we had some folks come up from Colorado who people didn't like their farming operation and they were slashing their tires and sending the police out to investigate them and all of those things. My question to you would be, why just 1 mile? Because noise, odors, dust, all of those things, was there a reason for just 1 mile, or how did you arrive at that
Senator
number?
Bouchard.
Mr. Vice Chair and Senator Steinmetz, accepted practices as reason why. I mean, I think some states don't even have a 1 mile. So I thought going at least that minimum of what I saw in other states, at least we had a bigger buffer zone. So it's just what I've seen practiced in other states is how I came up with that.
Okay,
Some states do not have that 1 mile buffer.
Thank you.
Committee, any other questions of Mr. Bouchard? Stick around, there might be some follow-up questions. Are there any public comments? Yes, please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Lori Urbakite with the Wyoming Realtors, yet again. We had our realtor meeting this last 2 days in China, and we had a lot of discussion about this. I spoke with a lot of realtors that indeed do sell rural properties and do deal in farm and ranch properties. They assured me that if you had half a brain as a real estate agent, you better already be doing this. You better be letting people know you're moving to an agricultural community, and there are different laws that pertain. So with that said, we agree that it's a good discussion point and that they ought to be having those discussions. So we wouldn't be totally opposed to the bill if we could do an amendment. And I believe you have an amendment that I prepared. And basically what we're saying on that amendment is on page 3, it would say the notice shall at a minimum state the following. And then I delete all of that notice of right to farm, because quite frankly, I don't want to be sitting across from a buyer telling him that Wyoming smells bad. It's just not, that just doesn't work for me. So I'd prefer to have the conversation with them that we have state statute 1144-103 that protects farming operations, and you're getting ready to move into an area that is agricultural based. So let's have that discussion. So I think that is a far better disclosure than saying there's going to be manure and it smells bad and there's going to be dust. And, I understand all those things happen. I grew up on a farm. I get it. And I can't believe that if a neighbor was complaining about a farm operations, that a sheriff's deputy or police would respond to that. I mean, our statutes are pretty clear that you have a right to farm. But maybe if we need to do a better job, and if this bill was enacted with that language in there, that would be a good reminder to the seller or to the real estate licensee that is representing that seller that they have to have that conversation with the buyers. So that would be our request. I think that laundry list of all the things that could occur is just a wee bit offensive to the state of Wyoming and to agriculture, quite frankly. So we'd appreciate your consideration of that, and I'd be happy to try and answer any questions. Oh, and Mr. Vice Chair, the 140 acres that's on the second page, that comes from existing subdivision language that I think was just pulled in here when it talks about wind farms and things.
Committee, any questions of Lori Urbakite?
Nope.
Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Yes, please come forward. Please state your names and who you're with, if you would, please.
Hello, my name is Mara McManaman, and I'm not affiliated with anyone.
State your name again. Marley or Marty?
Mara McManaman, M-A-R-A.
Oh, okay, Mara. Okay.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Chairwoman and Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the committee. Madam Chairwoman, I am one of your constituents, as you may remember. I am from Goshen County in Torrington, Wyoming. My family homesteaded Leo Ranch in 1907. We have 7,000 acres and my children are 5th generation. There are problems in parts of the state where people move in and complain or try to hassle ranchers and farmers. I have heard testimony from fellow ranchers about people who try to encroach upon their rights. This bill adequately addresses these concerns, and I think it has an accurate depiction of what to expect. I am in support of this bill 100%. Ranchers and farmers need the right to farm and ranch. Please vote aye on this bill. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Are there any questions of Mara? Committee?
Thank
Seeing
you.
none, thank you.
All right. I'm Mark Moody from Laramie County in Senate District 31. I support this bill 100%. I live in the subdivision near the Hereford Ranch off Industrial Way near I-80. And some people I recently moved within my neighborhood complain about being near a ranch, unfortunately. To me, this bill would solve the problems. I personally enjoy living next to a ranch because I understand the parameters and the Wyoming way of life and expectations that come with it. So I urge an aye vote on this bill, and I'll stand for questions.
Any questions of Mark by the committee?
All right. Thank you.
Seeing none,
Thank you.
stay close. We might have a question later on. Sorry, we'll come back, Mark, sorry. Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, Vice Chairman, excuse me. I appreciate you guys' testimony.
President, all right.
I've still, the one thing, like I said, I like the bill as well, but I just don't like creating more bureaucracy, more paperwork for real estate agents. And I think that we're trying to take care of people too much in any state. I mean, they need to understand, I think, before they buy that property, what they're buying. So I agree with you, what you guys said, and I appreciate your concerns from being from an ag family, but just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any
Thank you,
further
Madam
comments?
Chairwoman and Senator Ide. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, stay close. Is there any other public comment? Mr. Moline, if you would, please.
Brett Moline, Wyoming Farm Bureau Federation, sitting in support of this bill. Before I forget, I appreciate the amendment from the realtors. If it works for them, it works. And I appreciate the association working with my organization on this amendment. Good bill. I think having this information out there does help protect the agricultural operations. In response to the good Senator Kolb's question earlier, to my knowledge, this has not been an issue in Wyoming. People getting in trouble for having their ag operations, but in other states it has been. And there's been some instances, I believe it was North Carolina. It took years of a lot of litigation. The farming operations ultimately won, but it took years, thousands of dollars. So I see this as a rare opportunity for legislation to be proactive. And I appreciate that. So sitting in favor of the bill and of the amendment brought by the realtors, I would sit for any questions you or the committee may have, sir.
Any questions of Mr. Moline, committee? Seeing none, you're excused,
Let me
young
off
man.
again, or easy again. Thank
There
you.
go. Is there any further public comment? Please come up.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Keith Kennedy on behalf of the Wyoming Ag Business Account Association and the Wyoming Wheat Growers Association. We too support the bill, especially with the amendment that's been offered by the realtors. And to relay some firsthand information, I've actually been stopped by a sheriff when I was cutting beans at 2:30 in the morning because I was causing a bit of noise near the subdivision. So even if there isn't legal action, there's that slowdown and impediment to kind of a time critical operation. So with that, I'd welcome your questions.
Any questions of Mr. Kennedy? Seeing none?
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Going once, going twice? Is there anybody online? Okay. The public comment is closed. I would just like to make a couple comments real quick from a personal perspective. Where I farm in a heavy agriculture area, I personally when I was working a field and I knew it'd take me till 3, 4 in the morning, it'd take me all night long. I would work the part of the field next to any houses first in the daylight, so I wasn't turning and shooting lights and noise at that house at 3 in the morning. So that was a personal decision to be a good neighbor. But, and then on the other end of the scale, when I was county commissioner for 18 years up there in my county, we often would get people come in or call and complain that the farmer next to me is doing the opposite of what I did. They're turning by my house at 3 in the morning, the noise, the lights, and blah, blah, blah. Or I don't like this guy's water's coming down by my, I didn't know about that. I didn't, or that feedlot, that dairy. Wow. When the wind's blowing towards my house, I can really smell that operation. So, I've seen, as a farmer, one side of it, and as a commissioner, I saw the other side of it, and this is a good bill to help address some of those things. So with that, committee, what's your pleasure here?
Move the bill.
The bill has been moved. Any second to it?
Second.
Bill's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Senator Ide?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I just gonna vote my conscience here on the bill. I'm a no vote. Primarily, I just don't think that this new law really does anything to fix some of the comments and stuff that are out there. And it just adds more paperwork. And if it was amended, I could probably get with it on this. I think it's a good bill, Senator Bouchard, but I just don't know if this new law, we've got so many laws that just keep coming, and I don't know if this really addresses, it's really not enforceable by this notice here of any penalties. So thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Further comment?
Question.
Yep, Senator Kolb.
It's time to make amendments.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
I would, Co-Chair, I would move the Wyoming Realtors Amendment to RSF 34 as presented.
A second to that?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that from the Wyoming Realtors, the amendment. Discussion on that amendment?
Mr. Chairman, I think this gets to the intent that Senator Bouchard was trying to get to, that in any real estate transactions, there has to be a notice provided. And I'm very cognizant of the fact that when we provide notice, referencing the actual statute so people can find that, probably a much shorter and concise way, and it's clear that this is Wyoming law, so I think it cleans that up. And it accomplishes the notice requirement. They still got to provide the notice, and it just says this is existing state statutes, and here they are. If people want to go look them up, they can.
Okay, further comments? Seeing none, those in favor of the Wyoming Realtors amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Okay, that has passed. We're back on the bill.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Oh, I'm
Senator
sorry.
Hicks.
I'm an aye on the amendment.
But I want to go back and further amend the amendment.
Okay.
So to really bring this in, what we need to do is, where it comes in, it says 11-44-103, we need to say, also section 104. 103 is farm and ranch operations not considered, or excuse me, 103 is farm and ranch operations not considered a nuisance. section 1144-104 is actually the right to farm. And so we need to bring in that. So I would just further amend the realtors to include section 1144-104. So it's both of those provisions in that act.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to amend the Wyoming Realtors Amendment.
Second for secretary and see if she got it.
Did you get all that?
Linda, did you get all that?
So after, on the amendment, page 3, line 11, that insert there, you want to add after 114403, you want to add 1144-104.
Correct. Motion for that? Have we already done that?
It's been moved.
Moved and seconded. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're back on the bill. Are there further amendments to this bill?
Call for the question.
Seeing none, roll call.
Senator French,
Aye.
Senator Hicks,
Aye.
Senator Ide. No. Senator Kolb,
Aye.
Chairman Steinmetz.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, 1 no.
The bill has passed with a vote of 4-1. That does it for the Ag Committee tonight. Thanks, everybody, for coming and commenting. Much appreciated.
Mr. Chairman, are we adjourned?
We may adjourn.
All right.